after the first day, the second day, you're getting really comfortable going deep into these meditative states. And I can honestly say that I got into really ecstatic levels of altered states of consciousness where I did not have a remote viewing out-of-body experience. My roommate actually did, but I had some incredibly deep separations of my physical body, my energetic body. And that's the main slogan, is that you're more than your physical body.
Welcome back. I'm here again with Adam Butler. Adam, good to see you again, man.
Thank you. Perfect way to talk about more synchronicities.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about Dr. Eben Alexander. You're like, I just either read the book or watched a bunch of show with him or something. So, okay, let's talk about the Monroe Institute. First, what was the impetus that took you there? Or did you kind of got you to want to go there?
So similar to DMT, where it just seemed to be put into my peripheral and then right in my lap and then kind of forced down my throat multiple times in a very short amount of period. So I had been now exploring altered states of consciousness for 2 years or so, exploring with DMT and shrooms. Because of that, I had been reading a lot of literature based on that, whether it be near-death experiences. Actually, Anthony Peake is somebody, I don't know if you're familiar with his work. He may be somebody that would be a
name
great guest
sounds
to get
familiar.
on.
Say more.
I could definitely connect you with him, but he does a lot of work on near-death experiences, endogenous DMT, altered states of consciousness that can be gained through like epileptic seizures and temporal lobe epilepsy, migraine headaches. There's a lot of work that shows that humans can get into elevated states and receive information other than what our typical five senses bring in. So that study and looking into those topics, which led me to you, is the same thing that led me to Monroe. And it, like I said, within a short amount of time, just Robert Monroe's work and story came up about his out-of-body experience. Then I started getting into the videos about the Gateway program and the CIA investment into Monroe. And I was seeing a lot of similarities between how they were describing how their body responds to the binaural beats and the Hemi-Sync programs that Monroe uses. And it sounded honestly psychedelic, and it sounded like they were getting into DMT-like states, and that their astral body was remote viewing was very similar to me saying, my energy body separated and went to a DMT realm. There was a lot of things that I found interesting, and I kind of wanted to go there with my own bullshit filter. And I feel like with psychedelics, not only with myself, really forced me to look honestly at all of the happenings in my life, but also as far as how my research and studies go. So I went there not necessarily trying to call bullshit, but they were making some pretty outlandish claims. They were saying that your body could do some really crazy stuff and their technology could help you get to these levels. And I was thinking to myself, if I could combine that with DMT, or if I can combine the lessons that they're teaching me with psychedelics, that would be something that I could add to my foundation. So I went there with the explicit intent to compare my DMT sessions and experiences with what I could do at their program. And in order to do their programs, you do have to do their prerequisite, which is the Gateway program, which in my opinion was one of the best weeks that I've had. So I guess in summary, and that there's a lot of literature not only on their website, but there's shitloads of videos out about the Hemi-Sync program, about what it does. In essence, the simplest way to describe it is binaural beats just mean that different sound frequencies are going into each ear. And the way the brain registers those sounds is it registers the difference. So our brain is limited at the levels, the range of frequencies that we can typically pick up. But they're able to tweak and widen that range by using these binaural beats because they're able to get that middle number that they're looking for. And they found that there are certain frequencies that allow the body to meditate easier, to get into like a lucid dream state. There's ones that kind of allow you to vibrate higher and talk to conscious entities. Again, they're making kind of all these claims. And I went there and asked, will you be able to know very distinctly if you're listening to a Focus 12 or a Focus 15 or a Focus 21? Will you clearly know when you're in these, if you're going through this guided meditation, am I just following prompts, or am I really going to feel like this? Because I was going there a lot of these people had never had any experiences or states where their body had elevated to the levels that mine was. So I wasn't going there looking for fireworks and shows. I already had the fireworks and shows. I already knew what my body could do. I was almost like this was a lesser fuel, or I was prepared for. My mind was already prepared or had already been exposed to some really incredible shit. So I wasn't going there looking for incredible experiences. I was hoping I'd find it. But long story short, their techniques do really help get your body into elevated states. And I think it's a combination of things. So yes, their actual technology where they're pumping in sounds does get your body to viscerally respond and physiologically respond, where, like the energetic focus level, you really are sitting there kind of in bed shaking, and you can tell that, that they're pumping this vibrative hum through you, and it does loosen up stuff in your body.
To advertise on Through a Glass Darkly, email throughaglassdarkly@gmail.com.
But the being in a comfortable bed with complete silence, other than with the headphones, in complete darkness, where you're doing 6, 7, 8 hours of meditation per day for 6 days in a row, where everybody's phones are off, there's no computers, even you're getting called to lunch by a bell that's rung, like a legit bell. So, after the first day, the second day, you're getting really comfortable going deep into these meditative states. And I can honestly say that I got into really ecstatic levels of altered states of consciousness where I did not have a remote viewing out-of-body experience. My roommate actually did, but I had some incredibly deep separations of my physical body and my energetic body. And that's their main slogan, is that you're more than your physical body. And that is something that you clearly know when you do psychedelics, and you clearly know once you sit there and have your body separated by the hum of the binaural beats. And I actually wrote a paper on the similarities between what I thought my DMT experiences were with Monroe. And there's some really just common things. Again, you're more than your physical body. The comment that, really this is all vibration. All the information that's coming into your body is, in essence, vibration. And if you can resonate with that, you can get that information. That we're not alone, that there is something, whether it be God or source, and it's not a religious term. It's just that we as a human are a smaller facet of something greater, and if you can tap into that, you can unleash a lot of power. That it is all about love and connection. Again, sounds so corny, and the last thing that I would ever think would be coming out of my mouth. But coming out of a psychedelic session, as well as these Monroe sessions, you really do come out with, fuck, we are all in this together. Love is kind of the baseline underlying matrix or fabric that all this shit kind of works on. So I don't know if I'm necessarily doing a good job describing the actual techniques and what they do there. The experience, to me, just reaffirmed and confirmed how powerful my body was. And that probably, again, the more tools that you can put in your tool case. So do you always want to do shrooms or DMT? Nope. Do you always want to do an hour breathing meditation? Nope. Sometimes a nice walk in the woods with a binaural beat Monroe, system, that just, it's a nice thing to have there. And a really cool aspect of going there in person, though, and something I wasn't necessarily prepared for, and something I think our conversation today is a small aspect of, the therapeutic value of that group mentality. So there was 25 of us, and we all let our guard down. We all shared our most intimate, raw stories. We all cried. We all hugged. We all were there with the explicit intent of bettering ourselves, but then bettering humanity. And again, that alone was such a great experience, where you're not listening to news where everybody's yelling at one another, or social media where it's all just smut and everybody's talking shit, or just the horse shit of work. Or it was humans being humans, sitting around a campfire, singing, praying, eating good food, meditating with the desire to be a better person. And I came out of that, and I'd rate that a 10 out of 10. It was something I would definitely do again. And yeah, I left, and again, try to practical examples of how this may affect your life. And it's minor and it's maybe stupid to some people, but it's a good practical example. On the way there, when I drove there, I always listen to music, and I typically would tap 1 or 2 fingers just to either the drum beat or the bass beat. And it was just the simple, monotone kind of going. When I left there driving, like an hour and a half into it, I realized that my hands were so sore. And it's because I was tapping with all 10 fingers, and each song I was listening to, I was picking up the saxophone line, and then the treble bass, and then the cadence of the singer was this finger, and then like I was literally playing and manipulating each one of those wavelengths of sound. And I've never played an instrument. I'm not musically inclined. I don't know how to read music. But I saw and was able to manipulate and play each chord of the songs that I was listening on to radio, where my body just naturally picked up on it. And all of my senses have been heightened since then. You walk in the woods now and you're hearing all the different bird types. You're listening to the increase of wind through the leaves. You're so just buzzing and vibrating at such an elevated level beyond what I had priorly experienced up to my 40 years of being a human on this planet, up and until I removed all of the plaque and all of the bullshit and all the stuff that was weighing me down. I wasn't able to truly vibrate and hum with the universe, and psychedelics certainly removed the plaque and got me on that path. Monroe was one of those things where it was like, oh yes, there's more confirmation that your body is able to do this, and just one more tool. And there's so much more. Like I definitely want to do like a darkness retreat. I've heard has incredible value, where you get to see some crazy shit. But you just go into pitch blackness for days, if 10 days, 7 days, and you supposedly you get really psychedelic visions and all sorts of weird shit.
It's a sensory deprivation technique.
Yeah. There's something called the Lucia light, where it almost like produces like a seizure effect, where it's a step rate of pulsing light, and it kind of gets you in a trance state. So similar, like, and I guess like the guy that, well, one of the stories, I guess, that how they found it was, if you're sitting like on a train or on a bus and you're looking out the window through the woods and the sun's coming through the trees and you're just getting that constant flash at that right frequency, just like Monroe, with the right, to get your brain to resonate in coherence with a specific frequency will produce a reaction. So same thing with your sight. I think same thing with even just, textures and all of that. And DMT for me, like, just heightens all of that. And that's really been why I'm really passionate about sharing what that can do, because it makes you feel comfortable being a human instead of fearful of it. And it puts everything, like I said, into perspective. And it's nothing you could ever be addicted to. It's always intense. It's always something that, you never get used to. But if it's calling, I guess if it's calling, not necessarily you, but don't, I wouldn't just brush it off. If people were in a dark, shitty place like I was, and, like I said, the prescription pills and the alcohol and all that, the therapy isn't quite working, I think, being able to go within and look within for the answers, because only you know that crack in your psyche that needs filling. And then, if I could, with the Monroe thing, cool, the fact that there was 25 people there, it was great because we all had our unique superpower. Like there was one guy that could sing really well, and almost like a tuning fork. Like he was able to get his voice to vibrate and actually like move energy and move stuff, like make rocks vibrate and like hold your hand and make you kind of like shake. There's another woman that was just really powerful with her love. I mean, there's really no other way of like saying it. Like you would just get really like emotional when you were around her. People just kind of all leaned into what they were good at. And some people just sat back and absorbed it all. They were kind of just there as the sponge. But it was cool to see humans really flourish in a setting that really was just nothing more than trying to make each person be themselves. It was beautiful.
What was the age range of people who attended? And when was it? Like, was it in the fall, the spring?
This was November of last year. So it's in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. So beautiful campus. And it ranged from, I'd say I was probably one of the younger people. So I'd say probably from like 40 to the oldest were mid 70s. And it ranged from professional athletes, Olympians, famous authors, like legit famous authors. So you said you saw me on Michael Phillips' Third Eye Drops. So he was my roommate, that was a whole nother manifestation of my synchronicities of just like that. And being like, I actually just texted him this morning. Him and I still talk often, but everybody in that group actually still stays together. But a huge swath of people. And probably the group that maybe was represented most was the 60 to 65-year-old woman who was at or near retirement, who had raised their kids, who had, was in a happy marriage for 30, 40 years, and now was looking for that. Well, now what the fuck do I do with myself? I've got 20 years of life left, or so to speak, and they were like, I'm just so happy just thinking about these women, because I had such awesome personal conversations with each one of them. They were like, no, I'm worthy. I've earned this. I'm going to do this for myself. I saved up the money, and they were so proud that they were actually there. And none of them, they weren't with their spouses. They weren't with their kids. Like, they were these, like, they looked like my mom, who would be nervous going into the city for a concert, let alone a week in the woods to do something like this. And they were just, man, the transformational growth that these women had was so inspiring, because they now had a sense of self that was way beyond their title of wife, mother, or occupation. They were a divine piece of source. They were able to tap into what the mystics were able to tap into. They were able to reach levels that ascended masses were able to reach, and they knew that they were there doing it. And again, you leave that, you're so empowered. You're not going to let just the minutia of life sway you. You're not going to get pissed off by your spouse leaving her shoes by the door. You're not going to, I don't know. Once you've experienced really profound experiences like that, you don't have time for the stuff that used to piss me off on a day-to-day basis.
And then how did you said it kind of hit you upside the head a few times before you decided to go? Tell me about that dynamic. Like, why did you finally decide to go, and kind of what convinced you, and why did you choose the gate? It sounds like gateway process is the first one, but like, why Monroe specifically?
Self-love. And it was that simple. So I mentioned I make about $20 to $25 an hour from what I used to make. So for me to spend, I don't know what the price is now, but it's roughly $2,500. So not that's crazy amount, and that does cover food, that covers all that. So it's actually, in my opinion, a reasonable expense. But and I'm still in debt. I still owe quite a bit of money to a few entities, where I finally decided though that I'm worthy of this. Like, I'm here, I'm alive. I wrote this book. I'm helping people. I'm healthy. I'm happy. I've got these side jobs that I'm making in money. And yeah, does the IRS need their 20 grand? Yep. Does the state of Rhode Island need their back taxes? Yep. But it really was, actually, it was on a podcast. I think it was Meta Mysteries. And I was talking to these two younger guys, and I was just saying about the importance of this. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make the decision right now that I'm going to Monroe. And I said, I'm fucking going. And I made a declaration on that show that, damn it, I'm worth it. And I'm worth that $2,500. And yeah, and then I got off the show and I put the down payment. But it was, the shaking of the head was just, you'd watch a podcast and that would be the main topic, or a random obscure person would bring it up, or a friend would be like, oh, hey, have you heard about this? Or these remote viewing things would come up. Like I said, Joe McGonigal's story would come up, and then it would somehow tie back to Bob Monroe and remote viewing. So it led into, hey, explore this. And now that everything in my life, I listen to my gut, I listen to my intuition, and it's only proven me right. Where maybe in the past, and like I said, in 2020 hindsight, I can see where some of my biggest fuck-ups were when I knew intuitively that I should or shouldn't do something, and I didn't. Where now, that same intuitive feeling, I know it's something to be listened to, and so yeah, that's why I just actually planned another trip to Utah in December, based around Bryce Canyon, Zion National Park, and another kind of DMT therapy-based program that I'm going to help some people with, and it's like, again, do I have the extra cash for that? Not necessarily, but there's so many opportunities and so many doors and so many things that right now, that's the most important thing in my life. And my heart and my gut is telling me, Adam, lean into this. And that's what I'm going to do. Where before, it's so easy to hear the chirping from outside people, external things telling you what you should or should not do. And I'll let them say their piece, but I just listen to myself.
People are going to need it, though. I mean, in the next 5 years, there's going to be a lot of change, and there's going to be a lot of displacement, and there's going to be a lot of sorrow. So this is people like you are going to be needed.
Well, thank you. And I had a conversation, but we were talking about with somebody about like the Kali Yuga cycles and like these big cosmological changes that can happen. And I always talk about the next step in human evolution and what's the next step in our species. And one kind of argument, and I understand it, would be, there's not going to be this massive shift like that, or it's impossible to have such a foundational shift, or you can't, have a 180-degree change, and there's no way society is going to move from being a capitalistic, money-driven, hatred, there's no way it can go to one based on love and connection. I understand that argument, and there's a lot, and we talked about this like kind of pre-recording, there's a lot of evil, dark, nasty things pulling strings. Understand that, not naive to that. But if I can be the personal microcosm of what can happen, I personified all of the darkest, nastiest attributes of human society. I was the drunk, narcissistic, mean dick. I was the person that went into a room and just made it fucking stink with negativity. I was the self-limiting, self-destructive, all of those things. And it's not I beat up Adam. It's more just to show the contrast of what can happen, where now I am, again, not some enlightened soul that's got it all figured out, but what I can say authentically and truly is I am happy, I'm content, I'm connected, my relationships are full of authentic communication, I feel comfortable speaking my mind, all of those things that I can say are true in fact. That's the message, that if people could experience just a little bit of that, we can have this major shift, because I guarantee you, the like you were saying, you've got a hell of a family structure. If the core of that family is mean, nasty, belligerent, hateful, disrespectful, holding people down, and I'm certainly not saying you, but or if the head of a business or the head of a school or the head of a church, if any of these people are that dark, cancerous fucking shit, it's gonna ripple out. But just the opposite. That one person who switches their life around like me, and I can say my brother-in-law, I'll shout him out, Jay Gauthier, he's a year sober now, completely changed his whole life, completely. You can have a 180-degree shift. You can have a person, a family, a community, a state, a country, a world, a planet change, because once you feel how good it is to not be drunk, to not be nasty, to not be mean, to not not get pissed off at every road trip, every interaction at the market, every time you need to do anything. Like, and here's another kind of, are you that person? Like, if every day, all day, everybody else is an asshole, if the guy in the car is an asshole, the guy at Dunkin' Donuts is an asshole, the guy at the market's an asshole, the guy on TV is an asshole, both presidential candidates are asshole, the next election's going to be asshole, the news people are asshole, your boss is that. It's like, if everybody's a fucking asshole and pissing you off, you're the asshole, and like, you're the guy who's pissing everybody off. And for me, that was like who I was. Everybody else was the issue. And once you flip that script, then you can kind of see that, no, everybody is beauty, light, love. And there are some jerks out there. I'm not saying everybody, automatically gets that respect, but you start seeing just how awesome people are, and life can be, and interactions can be, and communications can be, and leaning on one another. And, if I could maybe direct the end of this podcast, and ideally, if I could, I'd like to do this with most of mine, which is the same way I ended the book, which is love thy neighbor. That was the last chapter I wrote. And again, not something that I thought would be coming from my mouth, but if we could all be, that person that your neighbor could lean on, be that person of strength, be that person of integrity, be that person that other people can go to, that's what this world needs. And because I'm only here because of the people that I leaned on. There were strangers on the streets that I didn't know that helped me through some amazing parts of my life. There were strangers that bought me dinners. There were, bums that were covered in piss that I hugged, that were some of the best embraces I've ever had in my life. And yeah, we're not alone. You're not in this struggle alone. And there are people here that will have your back. And that was a big part of my sharing my story and writing the book, is that I am kind of looking for my island of misfit fucking people that look and talk like me, that have been through shit like me, that maybe don't know how to even broach the subject, where I'll broach it with you. I'm accessible. My email, and I share this with everybody, my email is booksbyadambutler@gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to send anybody a free PDF copy of the book. I've got free promo codes if anybody wants an audio version. And honestly, if anybody wants
if he does, give him an Amazon review. He didn't ask me to say
if you don't mind.
Give him an Amazon. 5 stars. Nothing but 5 stars.
And I have no problem. Like, I've had people saying, hey, I'm short on money, but I'd really like a paperback copy. The point is to share the message, not necessarily make a buck or two on the book. And I'm here for that conversation if everybody wants to have it. And my network of resources. So we talked about actual, informational resources on psychedelics. I've got a couple that I can direct people to that aren't just people's theories, actual backed. That there's all sorts of support groups. There's a lot of people there that will listen to you if you need to share your story. And like I said, I'm one of them. So
repeat the name of your book. It'll be in the description below, but just so that people know again.
Butler's DMT Field Guide. And it's a short history of the DMT molecule. There are step-by-step recipes. There's some anecdotal stories. I have a chapter called Transcendental Sex, Art, and Science. So kind of the lighter side where I talk about implementing DMT in your kind of everyday life to make everything more meaningful, profound, and just dialed up. So yeah, sex on DMT could be we'll talk about that one next time because that's a whole nother, oh shit.
All right. Speaking of that, I think you got to go, but yeah, it was an absolute pleasure, and we'll definitely have you on again. And hopefully at some point, maybe I'll get to Monroe and meet you there or somewhere else.
I'd love to.
I think we're all part of a process right now where we're going to need to unlock a lot of these abilities to kind of keep humanity grounded. So we appreciate you.
And it feels good. It's a better way. It's not like, oh, woe is me and this is going to suck. And, it's really hard work and it's going to be trudging through. Yes, there's some inner work. And yes, you kind of have to, do some self-diagnostics. But on the other side, it just feels good. It's a better way to live. And I do want to say I appreciate our conversation off air and non-recorded just as much as the one on air. So thank you for sharing some of your personal stuff with me as well.
Yeah, my audience just doesn't want to hear it. So,
well, I didn't necessarily want to either, but I kind of got, I was here for it. But no, in all honesty, I'm glad I did because it's so important to put a personal perspective of this. Like, no, you do have this history, you do have this familial connections, you've got a lot going on in your life, and it's not just a podcast host and some guy that wrote a book. It's like, no, these are two people that now are affecting and have the ability to affect, the circle around them. So let's make it light and love and levity and good stuff, not the shit. So
100%. All right, my friend, it was an absolute pleasure, and talk to you soon.
Mine too. Yeah, I'm available. We'll definitely riff it again.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support because they get something out of it. They get a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you can get to support the channel. And I'd appreciate that you have it and you can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of an expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's 2 options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site, and there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much, and keep watching. I really appreciate it.